years. Those who knew Perry Como say he was everything many of his contemporaries were not. He was faithful, gracious, humble. Back in the 1950s, Como's hit variety show included a regular feature called Sing to Me, Mr. C, and sing to us he did.
Dream along with me.
When you listen to Perry Como sing,
To a star.
the beautiful notes that he came out of his mouth and out of his heart.
Sincerity and what I call the velvet voice is what people enjoy seeing and hearing.
I wanted to sing like he sang too, but nobody can.
Till the end of time, long as stars are in the blue.
He wasn't a star in the conventional sense. He was, every person's next-door neighbor with an enormous amount of talent.
He wasn't at all intimidating, just very, very considerate, very respectful.
Come along with me. I'm on the way to a star.
Certainly the most popular male singer with the most popular show and just about the most popular entertainer on television.
In December 1986, Perry Como hosted the last of his legendary annual Christmas specials. It was a bittersweet farewell for the television and singing icon. He'd come a long way from his humble beginnings as a singing barber in a coal mining town in rural Pennsylvania. In the early 1900s, immigrants from all over Europe came to America in search of a new life. In 1910, Pietro and Lucille Como and their 3 children landed at Ellis Island after a long and arduous voyage from their native Italy.
They had some kind of a drought. The whole town was devastated. That was Palena in Italy. And they decided to come to America.
The family settled in Cannonsburg, the heart of Pennsylvania coal country. It was here that Pierino Roland Como was born on May 18, 1912. One of 13 children, he was called Perry and was the first Como to be born in America. In those days, many men in the area worked at the mines, but Perry's father, Pietro, worked at a factory, the Standard Tin Plate Company. He earned about $35 a week.
Back then, you could feed a family with a dime. I can remember my mother sending me down to the store, tell me to go get 10 cents worth of soup meat, and be sure you get a soup bone with it. And the soup bone was free. And I'd take it home and she'd make a meal, feed the whole family. So $35 doesn't sound like much, but it was enough to take care of the family.
The Comos were a tight-knit and loving family. Perry's parents were strict disciplinarians and devout Catholics who instilled traditional family values in their children.
Religion is a big thing in Italian families. Italian families let little children, they go to Mass.
Music was also very important to Pietro and Lucille, and they always tried to save some money so their children could take music lessons.
My dad insisted everybody in the house, all the boys, take music lessons, play an instrument. So we all did. When my dad said, we did.
Perry had a natural gift for music. He had a good ear and a velvet voice. From the time he was a young boy, he would entertain his family.
We always sang at home. My dad was a singer. That's probably where Perry got it. He kind of listened to the radio, listened to Bing Crosby. And he tried to imitate Bing Crosby.
Perry's father was determined that none of his children would wind up working in the coal mines or the factories. He found jobs for them that would give them a chance for a better life. So when Perry turned 10, his father got him a job with a local barber. Perry learned the trade while doing chores around the shop. He worked before and after school and on weekends.
He loved his barbershop days. He tells terrific stories. He would tell about, he first of all, that he was a very good barber. And at that time, not only did they cut the hair, but they shaved, and they had the hot towels and the whole thing.
Perry honed his barbering skills on his father and brothers. The good-looking, dark-haired young man was earning 50 cents a week. As Perry grew older, his job at the barber shop caused his schoolwork to suffer. Studying didn't really interest him. But what Perry did enjoy was singing. He would entertain customers with his fine baritone voice. His hero was the great tenor Enrico Caruso, who also sang while apprenticing in a barber shop. By the time Perry was 13, he had apprenticed long enough to become a full-fledged barber. At 14, he decided to go into business for himself. With his father's help, he opened his own shop. He hired barbers to work for him while he was in school. Business was good for his barber shop, which was next door to a Greek diner.
Canonsburg had a lot of Greek immigrants, and so when they had weddings, that was when the tipping would be absolutely fabulous. And he said he could make up to $100 in just one evening.
Perry continued to entertain his customers with his singing and often played at weddings and parties on the weekends. He became known locally as the Singing Barber. But when the Great Depression hit, Perry had to close down his fledgling barber shop and go to work for someone else. Not running his own shop left Perry with more free time to socialize. When he was 16, he set his sights on Roselle Beline, a 14-year-old girl from the nearby town of Meadowlands.
Mom always said that she met Dad at a dance. She was looking in the window because she was not old enough to go in.
Perry decided that the pretty Roselle was going to be his wife someday. He hitchhiked to her hometown, serenading and wooing her in between his busy schedule, barbering, singing, and finishing high school. Even after graduating, he did not feel he was making enough money to marry Roselle. He decided to wait a few years until his financial future was secure. When he was 21, a friend made a suggestion that would change Perry's life. His buddy knew a band leader in Cleveland named Freddie Carlone and thought that Perry should audition as a singer for the band. Perry reluctantly agreed to give it a shot. After the audition, Perry returned to Canonsburg without any fantasies or expectations. He settled back into his life as the Singing Barber. 2 weeks later, he got a telegram from Carlone offering him a job. Perry wasn't sure what to do. He felt comfortable and secure as a barber, but Roselle and especially his father encouraged him to take risks. They saw this as Perry's opportunity for a better life.
He was saying that, oh, he made too much money, being a barber, to go and do this. And so his father said, no, you're going to do it, you're going to try it, and I'm going to force you to do it. So Dad was off with the Freddie Carlone band.
But Perry was practical. He got his boss to promise that if he didn't make it as a singer, he could have his barber chair back. Perry Como soon discovered that he would not be needing that barber chair again. You are watching Perry Como on Biography. In 1933, when Perry Como was 21 years old, he took a huge gamble and left his steady, secure life as a small-town singing barber. He moved to Cleveland to sing with the Freddie Carlone Band.
In the 20s and 30s, it was a lot more possible to have, bands everywhere. There were bands in every hotel. There were bands in every small town. In fact, every town of almost any size would have, bands all over the place.
As a vocalist with the Carlone Band, Perry gained experience performing and developed poise and confidence on stage. He soon had his own style and had a loyal following in the area. With Perry earning $28 a week and his new career showing promise, he felt confident enough to marry Roselle. She moved to Cleveland to be with him. Life wasn't easy for the newlyweds. They spent much of their time on the road, but they were devoted to each other.
She would talk about the first Thanksgiving that they had on the road, and she had never made turkey. Dad came home, and she was all excited because this is her first Thanksgiving for him. and she said she took one bite of it and she was ready to throw it in the garbage. And Dad sat there and he ate it, you know, and he was very good about it.
After 3 years as a vocalist with Carlone's band, word of Perry's talent spread. In 1936, Ted Weems, a well-known big band leader, went to hear Perry sing.
The Ted Weems band was really one of the defined the kind of genre that we now call hot dance music. He would have been in the top 10 of, you know, major bands across the country, if not the top 5.
Weems immediately offered Perry $100 a week to sing with his band. This was not only a big raise, but a huge opportunity to expand his audience. The bigger, more famous band introduced the young singer from Canonsburg to new fans coast to coast.
I wonder who's kissing her now. Wonder who's teaching her how.
Band came through the name of Ted Weems, and there was this young singer in the band named Perry Como. And all the local musicians were saying, wow, this guy is really terrific. He sounds just like Bing. Of course, all the girls in the family immediately fell in love with him. And to hear him sing was a joy.
Ted Weems' orchestra was on radio. In those days, most bands would come on radio around the country. And that's how people heard about Perry Como.
Perry's fame was growing, but his family remained his priority. In 1940, Roselle and Perry had their first child, Ronnie. They bought a car and took their baby on the road with the band.
I got the feeling they traveled months or years on end. They just kept on going around the country.
Perry was raised in a tight-knit family with traditional values. He and Roselle worried that life on the road was not a good way to raise their child. They wanted to put down roots. World War II helped Perry make the decision to settle down. In 1942, when Ted Weems and other band members enlisted in the Merchant Marines, the band broke up. Perry said he would wait until he was drafted. The Comos decided to go back to Canonsburg, even though it would put an end to Perry's budding musical career.
I had every intention in the world to, when I left Ted Weems, I figured I'm going back and get myself my little barber shop and forget it.
Perry was never drafted, and during the war years, a new generation of crooners, led by Frank Sinatra, was coming into vogue. Every nightclub wanted a crooner to headline for them. Perry kept getting calls from band leaders, nightclub managers, and producers, all wanting to sign him, but he turned them all down. He didn't want to travel anymore. But then in 1943, he got one offer that was different from the rest.
Perry got a call from somebody in New York, offered him a job, and at that time he didn't know what to do. He talked it over Roselle and my mother and father, and he finally decided he was going to take it.
The Columbia Broadcasting System, later known as CBS, made Perry an offer he couldn't refuse. They would pay him $100 a week to do his own daily 15-minute afternoon radio program. And most importantly, he wouldn't have to travel. The Comos immediately packed up and moved to New York. Perry started singing on CBS radio. His velvety voice was soon welcome in homes across the country.
Now there's nothing more to say.
I first heard Perry Como sing when I was in school. I used to hear him on the radio, and you got to know Perry. It was almost like he was part of the family.
The second I heard Perry Como on the radio, I thought that he was much smoother than Bing and sweeter.
There to stay, dear, now.
Perry also began appearing at top New York venues like the Copacabana and the Versailles Club. Audiences loved his mellow and easy listening style. In 1944, NBC hired him to host a primetime show. It was called the Chesterfield Supper Club, and it was quickly voted the most popular program on the radio. For the singing barber who wondered whether he'd be able to support himself as a musician, this was like a dream come true, and it was only the beginning. The record company RCA Victor was looking for a crooner to compete with Bing Crosby and Frank Sinatra. Perry was perfect for them.
Como has his own style, his own kind of songs that he did, his own approach to repertoire, his own approach to orchestration, and a whole different sound that comes out of Crosby, but certainly is not beholden to him.
First record he ever recorded for RCA was Goodbye Sue, which got a lot of play, but was not a hit record. Perry Como's first hit record was Till the End of Time.
Stars are in the blue.
Till the End of Time turned out to be the biggest seller of 1945 and made Perry into a star. His fans would wait outside the radio studio after his program, hoping to catch a glimpse of Perry and get his autograph. The teenage girls, the Bobby Soxers, swooned as much for him as they did for Frank Sinatra. It wasn't surprising that Hollywood wanted to cash in on this new singing sensation. 20th Century Fox signed Perry to make a movie called Something for the Boys. So he brought Roselle and Ronnie to Los Angeles. Though Fox signed Perry to a multi-picture contract, he was uncomfortable making movies.
I have here in my hand the most sensational number of the century. Everybody's after it, but the way I figure it, it's your type song.
Is this another one of those little stinkers you're always saving up for me?
He made 4 films, including Dollface.
Mike's got to give us 2 weeks' notice.
We've had 2 months' notice when you come to think of it. Ever since the doll left, it's been like this. No customers, no dough coming in. We ought to thank Mike for carrying us this long.
He was becoming even more uncomfortable with the loss of privacy that comes from being a famous movie star. When fans showed up at his son Ronnie's school, that was the last straw. Perry asked to be released from his contract and returned with his family to New York. Perry was still hosting the Chesterfield Supper Club, which aired 3 nights a week. But more and more, Americans were abandoning radio for the new medium of television. And in 1948, Chesterfield decided to sponsor a 15-minute television version of Perry's show. His boyish good looks and low-key charm were ideally suited for the small screen.
To see Perry is to love him, not just to listen to him, because he is that guy next door who happens to sing beautifully. And that's why so many people identify with him.
They could see that Perry Como was, the man in the sweater who they all felt comfortable with, who spoke to them, sang to them directly.
The show was so successful that 2 years later, in 1950, CBS wooed him back.
Enjoy the Perry Como Show. All the top tunes on TV by the man who was just voted the top male vocalist of the year in Billboard magazine's annual disc jockey poll.
They offered him a bigger salary, but more importantly, they would call it the Perry Como Show. The 15-minute TV show turned Perry Como into a household name.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Perry's television popularity helped him sell more records. From 1949 to 1958, 10 of his songs were #1 hits. His voice had terrific range, which meant he could sing many different types of music.
He loved ballads, but he also sang a lot of novelty songs because they sold a lot of records. Like Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes and Papa Loves Mambo, Hot Diggity.
Hot diggity, dog diggity, from what you do to me, from the moment you're mine. Hot dog!
Find a wheel, and it goes round, round, round as it spins along with a happy sound.
Perry was often criticized for the novelty songs. He wasn't fond of them himself, but they were among his most successful records.
Here's got one of the greatest ballad singers of all time, and if you go down the list of his hits, they're all silly little tunes.
He had such a style that he was able to sing all kinds of songs, including some really, in some cases horrendous novelty songs that he was just able to make into great pop music.
Despite the criticisms, no one could dispute that Perry Como had the star power to generate hit after hit, and his popularity on television was continuing to grow. Soon he would go head-to-head with one of America's most famous entertainers for the crown of Mr. Saturday Night.
He was in every way, and easy to be with, and he was the perfect host.
Well, Perry, I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend this hour with than you. Come on, Eddie, you can think harder than that.
I can't think of anybody who wasn't on that show. We had so many people, and they wanted to come on the show. I can't think of any singer or Bing and Frank.
Working with Perry was a delight, and he was so easy, and it was wonderful.
Perry and his guests weren't the only attraction. His show was elaborately produced, with big sets, a full orchestra, and all the other trappings of a Broadway show.
One of the wonderful features of that show was he would take letters from the audience and he personalized it.
We get letters. We get thanks of letters. And it's saying, dear Perry, would you be so kind of requesting? And it was kind of fun.
Perry's show posed a serious threat to Jackie Gleason's reign as king of Saturday night television. The two stars, who were friends, would often tease each other about the ratings.
Do the show on Saturday night. Sunday morning, if the telephone rang, I knew it was Jack. He said, well, the Silver Throat, we knocked your socks off last night. so if we would beat him by a half a point or something, I'd call him, well, big fella, we did it to you. It was kind of a wonderful, it was a friendly thing, you know.
He was a formidable challenge to Gleason, and in a way offered a kind of counter-programming to Gleason, because Gleason was not the cool character. He was the hot, character, the quick and fast humor.
Some critics felt that Perry's style was too cool. They jokingly described him as Como-tos. Perry didn't let the criticism get to him. Part of his appeal was that he was able to laugh at himself.
This show comes to you tonight from New York, half live. The other half is Mr. Como.
In fact, his relaxed demeanor on the show allowed him to stay calm despite production mishaps that inevitably occurred during the live broadcast.
My mother sang a song to me in tone.
Nothing bothered him. He'd be talking, and he'd say 10 seconds, and he's talking about it. The little red light comes on, the music starts, and he starts to sing. You want to talk about a guy being cool. He's the coolest.
Perry's overly calm attitude led critics to think he was barely paying attention, but he was actually calling all the shots.
Perry Como was in charge of the show from start to finish. He would listen to the producer, but he was in charge of everything there.
As far as being relaxed, you can be sure that I'm aware of what's going on, always have been. You can't get too relaxed. You can carry that too far, and it can be misunderstood and say, oh, well, he doesn't give a damn, But I assure you, I give a damn.
Perry was obviously doing something right. He eventually beat out Jackie Gleason in the ratings war. Despite the demands of a weekly TV show, Perry was still recording music and remained popular on jukeboxes and on the radio.
He just knew what the public wanted and was able to keep delivering it on a very consistent basis.
By 1956, Perry, who was 44, was making $1 million a year from his television show and selling 4 million records, making him one of the richest crooners of the day. But the one-time barber still lived modestly. His home in Sands Point, Long Island, was hardly extravagant by show business standards. He and Roselle wanted a bigger family, but they could not have any more children, so they decided to adopt. In 1947, Perry and Roselle adopted Therese.
Mom and Dad walked into the room and there were 3 babies that they could choose from. And they said there was one baby that looked like Lena Horne, and they really wanted to take that baby home. But I think I smiled, and that was it. And so I was the chosen one, so to speak.
3 years later, an adopted son, David, joined the family.
Dave was adopted when he was 4. And he had been in foster homes. He had a different experience than I did.
Perry and Roselle valued their privacy and kept their children insulated from show business.
I never got close to Perry's family. In fact, I don't think nobody really got too close to his family. He was a very private man.
You never read anything in the pulp magazines about the Como family. His personal life was his personal life. And he kept it that way.
Despite his wealth, Perry wanted his children to learn the value of money, just as he had as a child. So he made them do chores around the house and work in summer jobs.
I wouldn't have thought that we were people of wealth. We weren't raised like that. We did not get cars or, boats or, things like that.
Though he was one of the most famous entertainers in America, Perry shunned the spotlight. 6 nights a week, he was at home with his family.
Cards were a big thing in our family. We played a lot of cards.
Besides spending time with his wife and kids, Perry's favorite pastimes were playing golf and shooting pool.
Dad loved playing pool. He would play with Jackie Gleason a lot since he lived in the neighborhood, and Minnesota Fats, Willie Moscone would come and play.
Perry remained friendly with the competition, and unlike many others in the often cutthroat entertainment business, he also offered a helping hand to young singers.
I first met Perry Como when I was an usher at the Paramount Theater, and I was running the elevator, and Perry had just finished a show. He was starring there, and I was taking him up to his dressing room. So I stopped the elevator between floors, and I start singing. There must be a way to help me forget that we're through. So I stopped singing after that. He said, go ahead, sing. So I sang some more, and then I stopped again. He said, sing it, finish it. I finished the song, and he said, no, kid, you got to keep singing. You got a nice voice.
And I think it just shows how secure the man was and how assured he was of his own talent. And just that he was a nice guy, that he was able to help people whose talent he admired.
Perry had every reason to be secure. He was at the top of his profession, both as a singer and as a television star. But both television and music were changing, and Perry would have to fight to stay on top.
For the web's best bios, log on to biography.com.
A&E's look at Perry Como continues on Biography. By the end of the 1950s, Perry Como had come a long way from being a singing barber in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. He'd been a recording star for more than 15 years and had hosted his own television show for more than a decade. It appeared that success was here to stay. One of the longest-running shows on television was the Kraft Music Hall, whose previous host had included Bing Crosby, Jimmy Durante, and Bob Hope. In 1959, Perry was offered $25 million to produce and star in the show. At the time, it was the biggest contract ever given to a television star. And for Perry, who had long idolized Bing Crosby, this offered a chance to fulfill a childhood dream.
The show had a sort of an instinctive class about it that other shows didn't have. It was just a basic, good, honest presentation for people and just ordinary people.
Perry Como's Kraft Music Hall was an enormous success and solidified Como's reputation as the king of the variety show. Everyone from the Everly Brothers to Mickey Mantle to Judy Garland appeared on the show. For 4 years, the show had a successful weekly run, but the times were changing. Rock and roll was sweeping America, and for many people, crooners like Perry now seemed hopelessly out of date. Perry's show began losing its audience. The weekly program was replaced with a series of monthly specials. Eventually, he was doing only a few seasonal shows a year. But Perry was not going to fade quietly into the annals of television history. He knew there was a loyal audience out there for his style of show, and he was determined to reach them. So Perry created a new television tradition out of a holiday and music that he had always loved. In 1964, he started doing Christmas specials, and he became known as Mr. Christmas.
We did so many Christmas shows. It's a show that I enjoy doing. And I love the music that's in it. And people know you for that show. You know, they say, well, a couple of times, wish you a Merry Christmas.
Each year, Perry's show traveled to a different place, showcasing local talent and American guest stars. He sang Christmas carols and ended the show with a classic.
I think my all-time piece of music is the Ave Maria because it's beautiful music. I enjoy singing it. And it's a time of the year for it.
Who would not want to have the wholesomeness, the warmth, the assurity of Perry Como singing our favorite Christmas carols? It was a warm family evening with Perry Como.
It wasn't only the small screen where Perry had to battle to win back his audience. He hadn't had a song hit the top 10 of the Billboard charts since 1958. In 1970, he decided to accept an offer to do a show in Las Vegas. This was the first time he would perform in concert since the 1940s. After all those years in television, doing a live show gave Perry stage fright.
That's the only time I ever saw him really frightened. He was apprehensive, like a little kid going on a stage the first time, because here was television audiences are one thing, but in a nightclub, that's a different challenge. And after about a couple of nights, he got into it, and he had a ball.
Soon after that appearance, Perry had his first top 10 song in more than a decade. It's Impossible.
For to live without your love is just impossible. Impossible.
In 1976, 3 decades after his recording career began, his album, And I Love You So, went gold.
He just kept going and going. Even into the 60s and 70s, he still kept, landing chart hits, even, and in terms of sheer volume of sales, he's just about the most popular singer of all time, right up there with Crosby.
Perry Como recorded about 150 albums, and about 14 of them were hits. That started with Till the End of Time, which was a gold record. And it went all the way through And I Love You So. It's Impossible.
Despite his comeback, Perry wanted to slow down a little. With their 3 kids grown and on their own, he and Roselle decided it was time to leave New York. In the early 1970s, they moved to Jupiter, Florida. It was a small town near Palm Beach, but off the glamorous track, which suited them. Perry could spend more time with his family and pursue his other passion, golfing with his friends.
We really spent a lot of time here in Palm Beach at the Battle Nile Country Club. We'd see them there a lot. And we'd play, and you would have to pay off. If you won, you got a quarter, and if you lost, you had to pay a quarter at the end of the hole. And we had more fun playing for those quarters.
It was a quieter life for Perry, but he was still a big enough star to warrant a comedy spoof of his famous relaxed style. A Second City TV skit in 1981 showed Perry falling asleep as chorus girls danced manically around him.
Perry Como and I did see the skit, and we really enjoyed it. And Perry almost fell asleep while he was watching it.
By 1986, television executives were unsure whether Perry could attract the audiences he once had. They planned to broadcast his Christmas special 3 full weeks before Christmas. Perry was not pleased.
And I said, look, people that watch this show Saturday night at 10 o'clock, 3 weeks before, it's too late. Get me a better time and get me closer to Christmas, you know. So I said, why don't you call me? And they didn't call, which is okay.
The 1986 Christmas in San Antonio was Perry's last yearly special on television. But he wasn't ready to quit, even though he was now 75. Instead, Perry continued the holiday tradition he started by going on the road every December with a 3-week Christmas concert tour.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
I enjoy getting on stage. Anybody tells you that they don't enjoy going out there is not telling you the truth.
Perry's critics thought he would have faded into obscurity, along with most of his contemporaries. Instead, Perry could still sell out his concerts. And one of his greatest honors was yet to come, along with the biggest tragedy of his life. A&E's look at Perry Como continues on Biography. By 1987, Perry Como was off the air. His annual television Christmas show had been canceled. But the 75-year-old singer was not ready to call it quits. Instead, he was still performing concerts. That same year, Perry was given the Kennedy Center Lifetime Achievement Award, one of the highest honors an entertainer can receive.
He was very proud, but I don't think he ever thought he deserved any of the awards that he got. He was very bashful about being honored. But I know being honored at the Kennedy Center was just a highlight of his life.
It was particularly special for Perry to be praised by then-President Ronald Reagan, who years before had been a guest on Perry's show.
But as he said recently, I never dreamed of being in show business, really. It was kind of a lark. Well, just maybe that's been the secret of Perry Como's success. His performing has always been so effortless, such a wonderful lark.
In 1990, Perry Como's place in television history was assured when he was inducted into the Academy of Television Hall of Fame. At age 80, Perry Como wasn't ready to retire. He still did a Christmas tour each year and contributed his time and talents to help some of his favorite charities. He said he'd know when it was time to stop.
I'll know when I'm uncomfortable and when I can't sing. And when I can't sing anymore, I'll just say, thank you for 60 wonderful years. What can I say?
In 1994, more than 6 decades after he first went on the road with the Freddie Carlone Band, Perry decided the traveling was finally becoming too much for him.
Dad did a show in Ireland, and I think that was, he had realized that he had come to the point where he physically could not do it anymore. He got very sick when he was doing that show.
He said to me, Mick, show me an 85-year-old singer that is still doing concerts. I couldn't argue with him.
Perry looked forward to just spending time with his wife. In July 1998, he and Roselle celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary. It was a quiet celebration with close family. Suddenly, 2 weeks later, his beloved Roselle died of a heart attack. Perry was devastated.
I think he still finds it very hard that Mom has passed away. Just the feeling in the house is not the same because she was the house. So it's a very different feeling for him. He misses her, but the rest of the family keeps him topping, especially the babies.
Before her death, Roselle had helped the citizens of Perry's hometown of Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, create a tribute to him. In 1999, the town unveiled a larger-than-life statue of Perry Como. Perry was too sick to attend, but many of his friends and his ever-growing family were there.
People just were wonderfully appreciative of their favorite son, and the band was playing. It was wonderful. It's like almost like the Music Man kind of thing, I thought.
Perry Como had come a long way from his days in Canonsburg. His charm, his popular television show, and most of all, his silver voice have made the former Singing Barber one of America's most beloved entertainers.
I'm on my way to the stars.
Perry Como is probably the history of television most successful singer, and he helped define a very important aspect of American television.
The fact that Perry was having a good time doing it made him even more lovable from the eyes of, millions of people.
Some of the higher-minded people that discuss the history of pop music, they tend to dismiss Como too much, I think, because he did so many of those kind of inane songs, which I think he does wonderfully. And he certainly deserves to be taken a lot more seriously than he has been.
Find the ring, and put it round.
He had a different kind of charisma than Sinatra. And he was the nicest guy in the world. You couldn't be better than him.
To know Perry Como and to have sung with him will always be one of the gifts that God has given me.
I think I've gotten everything that you can possibly get out of someone who cuts hair and sings a song.
What's there to say, dear, now?
The statue of Perry Como in Canonsburg cost $75,000 to design and create. The money was raised by selling candy bars and tickets to spaghetti dinners. It now stands as a permanent monument to the Singing Barber,